Hey guys, welcome back. Hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first story is titled, Tricked a Self-Proclaimed Ladies' Man into Performing Mandatory Community Service. My dad and uncle were in a fraternity together in college. This guy named Steve was also in the fraternity. My uncle and Steve did not get along well. Steve was a self-proclaimed ladies' man and liked the same girl as my uncle. Steve loved to prank people and apparently sabotaged my uncle's moped, which my uncle had to pay to get fixed. Later on, Steve did something that got him in trouble with the college and got him put on probation, but the college never followed up on any sort of action item, and everyone kind of forgot about it. My dad then hatched a revenge idea. This was many years ago when personal computers weren't common, but my uncle happened to have one and was pretty savvy with it. They decided to create a fake letter from the Dean of Student Affairs from the college. In the letter, they detailed the action that got Steve put on probation and told him that he was required to perform community service by mowing 10 random people's lawns. My dad and uncle specifically went and looked for the absolute most overgrown yards they could find and listed their address on the letter. I should mention that this happened in the South in the summer when it's like 95 and crazy humid. In the letter, they stated that Steve must complete these 10 yard mowings or he would not be allowed to graduate. They took the letter and put it in Steve's mailbox. Several days later, my dad was over at a friend's house and happened to look across the street and see Steve mowing this old lady's yard that had like foot-high grass with a push mower. The mower kept sputtering out, and Steve looked pissed. My dad asked the guy what was up with Steve, and the friend was like, "Oh, you didn't hear? Steve got a letter from the school saying that he had to mow all these yards or he couldn't graduate." The next story is titled, How I Put the Fear of God into an Entitled Restaurant Worker. I'm a custodian at a major theme park where we have a good number of outside businesses, such as restaurants, shops, arcades, etc. Normally we get along, but tonight was a night where I wished they'd up and leave. One of the trash compactors broke, so a sign was put on the compactor asking people to take their trash to a different yard to be compacted and not leave their garbage there to rot. Well, one restaurant decided they were above this and started piling their trash around the compactor. At one point, it got so high that I called my manager to tell him it was a safety hazard. He talked to the restaurant managers and they promised they'd tell their teams to move it to a different yard. At the end of the night, I noticed the pile had gotten even higher, so I snapped a picture of it on my work phone. This lady, who I've had the displeasure of working with, came out with a huge pile of trash and began cursing me out in Spanish for taking a picture. Angry, I turned to her and said in my most threatening voice, "Soy una bruja," Spanish for I am a witch. Two important things to keep in mind. I knew this woman was very superstitious. I knew she was especially terrified of Santa Muerte, a Mexican folk saint who will grant any request asked by her devotees, even for harm to come to their enemies. This lady's eyes got huge as she heard me say in English, "Santa Muerte, hear my prayer. May this woman have horrible luck until she sincerely apologizes to me." I knew this woman could not understand English, so she crossed herself repeatedly and got out of my way when I smiled and left. The next story is titled, I Remembered His Blog. A decade ago, I was working behind the bar that I own one night. It was a Sunday night, which meant a mandatory midnight close in my city. We did last call at 11:30 and made sure anyone who needed a drink had one. A rather drunk fellow ignored me when I asked if he needed anything, so I closed him out. At midnight, as the lights go up and the music dies, he turned at me and asked me for one more beer. I said no, we are now closed. This dude lost his mind. Started shouting at me about the bad service and how dare I deny him a drink. This happens sometimes with a mandatory midnight closure. As he was leaving, he stopped and shouted at me, "I have a blog with thousands of readers. And this is it for this bar. I'm going to review it so badly this place will be closed in a week. I hope you like being jobless." And he left. And to his credit, he didn't come back for years. I'd often see him in the neighborhood, usually very drunk late at night, but he didn't come back to my bar. Needless to say, the bar has not closed due to a bad review in a blog. In fact, we've really thrived over the last decade, and we handled COVID well while survived lockdown, and business has been booming. A couple of weeks ago, the guy came back into the bar and sat down and ordered a beer from me. I served him. He paid. I asked how he's been and how his blog is going. He looked at me like I was crazy. I haven't had a blog in years. Did you used to read it? No, I told him. I assumed no one read it because otherwise I'm sure we would have been forced to close due to bad service. As I walked away, it was really clear he had no idea what I was referencing or memory of being a dick decades ago. But man, it felt good to mock him to his face. The next story is titled, "They Say You Can't Put a Price on Happiness, but it cost me $250,000, and it was worth every penny." My late husband was in a car accident his senior year in 1986 and got a settlement of $30K, which he could access at 18. He was a gearhead and wanted to buy a Corvette, but his mom didn't like that idea, so she made him a deal. If he bought the car, he would have to pay rent and storage for his other cars, or he could buy property and stay home rent-free as long as he wanted. So at 18, we started looking at property, and he bought 10 acres for $5,000. We intended to build there at some point or sell it later on. In the early years, we would have massive ragers. There was no one around to bother, and it was great. Eventually, people bought and built on the lots around us, and zoning laws changed to allow one house per acre, so there were several houses. But it was still rural, and a few of us had large empty acreage the kids would use to ride their dirt bikes. We didn't care. Let them have fun. About 15 years ago, another new house went in, and it was right on the property line. They hadn't even finished construction on the house when the wife began calling to demand I take some trees down because they blocked her view. The funny thing was, the view they blocked was from the RV that they were living in. Once they moved into the house, they wouldn't even be near those trees. So I said, sorry, but no, I'm not cutting the trees. She wasn't happy, and over the next couple of years, she called to complain about all sorts of stupid crap and the noise of the kids on dirt bikes. Hell, she even got mad at people riding their horses because they made her dogs bark. One spring day, I'd drive out there and notice the stream that ran across my property and theirs had been dammed on and diverted on my land about 50 yards from their property line, which sent it along the dirt road that went down a hill and up the other side, creating a pond where it was blocked and another at the bottom of the road and preventing me from accessing the majority of the property. Now, I knew it was their doing because the previous fall/winter she had called to complain my stream was causing her property to flood. First off, it wasn't my stream and her property didn't flood. In wetter months, the stream naturally got larger and it flowed downhill, and it kept to its banks for decades. Their lot was originally heavy wooded and they had cleared all of the trees. And I could tell they had done a bunch of grading, so if they had water issues, that's their doing, not mine. Anyway, I went home, and the following weekend we grabbed the small backhoe and a couple of friends to unblock the stream. We hadn't even unloaded it before we heard her screaming, and the cops showed up. They were unsure if they should stop us, because our state is pretty environmentally conscious, and there are strict wetland laws. The cops didn't know if we were rerouting the stream or if they had. I completely understand where they're coming from, and I knew this could happen, so not only did I bring pictures to show how the stream had been, but one of our friends was an official at the DOE. He was able to explain the law and that we legally needed to put the stream back. We couldn't do much about the pond except wait for it to dry out, but we sent the stream back down its original channel. Of course, when it got to their freshly graded land, it had no channel to follow, and yeah, it did flood their yard. Unfortunately for them, there happened to be that DEO official who felt it was his duty to issue them a citation for diverting and illegally altering the stream. They ended up having to put the stream back and revegetate with native plants and shrubs in a 25-foot buffer zone, which took away a portion of their yard, pay us damages, and got a huge fine. As the spring and summer progress, The kids on dirt bikes discovered the pond. By this time, it's 8 to 18 inches deep, and they are loving riding through it. So instead of just riding through there, they spent hours in that area, much to the annoyance of the neighbor. She calls the police multiple times, but the kids would either be gone or say they have permission to be there. So the police call us and we say, yep, let them ride. Now, we did have concerns about liability if they got hurt, but we like pissing her off. So we took the risks. Not the best idea, and thank God no one ever did that we know about. A couple of years go by and she has learned to text because we ignored her calls when she had something to complain about. I make my annual spring visit and notice there are 23 large cedar and fir trees cut down. 5 have been cut up, and a path leads directly to their very full woodshed. I was pissed. This isn't something I can just fix, and you don't duck with my trees. I called the police, and their excuse was that the firewood was the sole source of heat, and they needed the wood. They cut so many, so it would dry out over the next couple of years. They get another no trespassing order. The stream one had expired and charged with theft and vandalism. I called the police, and their excuse was that the firewood was the sole source of heat, and they needed the wood. They cut so many, so it would dry out over the next couple of years. They get another no trespassing order. The stream one had expired and charged with theft and vandalism. Life goes on, and we still got text every time she heard a dirt bike, horse goes by, or whatever irritated her on any given day. We started having summer campout parties over the next few years, and she always called the police or fire department. Of course, we never got cited because we are not stupid, and we didn't break any laws. Sadly, my husband died suddenly, and eventually, I decided it was time to sell because I wasn't going to build a house there. So I listed the property for $1 million, which was the market rate at the time. Remember, it was 10 acres, and you can build 1 house per acre. Of course, anytime people went out there, she would flag them down and tell them it was flooded and all sorts of nonsense. She didn't want anyone to build or be there. I should have renewed the second trespass order, but it expired right around the time my husband passed, and it just wasn't important at the moment. Developers were not bothered, and we did get a few offers under ask I was happy with, but I really wanted to sell it to an individual who wanted to build a single home, just being stupid and sentimental. My agent wasn't happy, but understood, LOL. One day he calls me with an offer that is much less than any of the others, and they wanted to do an owner-carried contract for 3 years, with a balloon payment to pay me off at the end of 3 years. It's a couple who wanted to meet me out there. I didn't have anything going on the upcoming Saturday, so I said I would meet them with the understanding that I really wasn't interested in carrying the contract, and the price was too low. We figured they were hoping to change my mind, and we were hoping that they would come in with a better offer, LOL. They got there before me, and when I arrive, the idiot is there telling them how bad the property is. I parked on the main road and was walking in, so none of them knew I was there. As I approached, 2 little kids come flying up on dirt bikes. She comes unglued, grabbed a rock and threw it at them. Came nowhere close to hitting them. The guy immediately starts yelling at her and tells her to get the duck out of there. It scares her, and she left. He sees me and begins to apologize, but I stopped that and thanked him. We start talking, and he explained part of the reason that he wanted the specific property was because they had 2 young boys who rode motocross, and he loved the trails, plus he wanted to build a track for them. I took a $250,000 loss on the sale and carried that contract just to spite that idiot. While that is a huge sum, remember we paid $5,000 for it and got almost $300,000 for the trees and another $20,000 for the nonsense with the stream. Plus enjoyed the property for almost 30 years, and I got the interest on the contract and the balloon payment, so it wasn't like we really lost out, plus knowing the idiot was going to be miserable for years to come. You just can't put a price on that. I sold it 6 years ago, and I still go out there a couple of times a year just to check it out. They have built a beautiful house at the farthest point from the idiot, and there is a huge track up by her place. She still sends me nasty texts, and I should probably block her, but it makes me smile each time knowing she is still pissed. Well worth the loss, and I know my late husband would approve. He always knew I was a petty idiot. The last story is titled nice neighbor. Over the past few years, our apartment management has really gone down the toilet. We can no longer even get a call through to anyone in the office. They hide away and won't answer the door some days. Well, one neighbor is pissed. Their lease renewal is due Monday, tomorrow. They have attempted to contact them for over a month, and her rent is also jumping to $899 from $595 for a one-bedroom. The one bedroom is tiny, no washer and dryer in unit. This is a crazy jump. Her petty revenge is sitting in the laundromat telling people how to only spend 25 cents on a load of laundry. If they're going to duck her over, she's going to duck them over. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you would like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again.